Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Driver Defense Team channel. I am Attorney Kelly Moore, and I'm here with Attorney David Stevens. Today, we are talking to you about practicing in Kane County. Kane County is one of the 4 counties that we practice in, and we like to think that we know a lot about it. And because we're there so often, it gives us a lot of advantages for our clients. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so Kane County is, like Kelly said, a place that we're there all the time. We know the judges, we know the prosecutors, we know the police officers, and for the most part, they're all pretty good. We got a good relationship with them, but not afraid to fight with them either. So
Yeah, not afraid to advocate for our clients, right?
right.
What would you say your favorite part of practicing in Kane County is?
Currently, ever since COVID, really, Kane County has really taken to Zoom, at least some of the judges, and because we do a lot of DUIs, the DUI judge there is a really good judge, and he loves Zoom, and so we can get a lot of things accomplished really quickly and really efficiently in the DUI courtroom. And many times without even our client being there, because the judge actually wants them to work and only be there when it's necessary. Of course, they can always be there; it's their right. But I really like that about that particular courtroom.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I love practicing in the DUI courtroom in Kane County. I really like the judge. I like the fact that it is a DUI courtroom, which means this judge is basically like an expert in DUIs. Like, he gets it. He gets the burden of proof. He gets if somebody's totally falling down drunk or if, it's pretty close. I feel like really cares about judicial efficiency. He does like a lot of stipulated bench trials, of course, if the defense and prosecutor agree to it, and he gives really thoughtful rulings even when he does that. And like you said, just saying to the clients, like, go to work, let your attorney handle this. You don't need to be here for a status date. I just love to, in that courtroom, on Mondays, I think Mondays and Wednesdays, you can log on early as the attorney anytime from 8 and before 9, and you just talk to the prosecutor if you need a quick continuance or say, hey, I sent you a mitigation letter. Can you get back to me on that? You don't step up in front of the judge. Your client doesn't have to be there. So that's super nice. And then I love how he does all of his pleas at 11 a.m. on Zoom.
Yeah.
And all of that documentation is electronic. I mean, the state's attorney's office goes so far as they prepare all the plea documents, send it to us to review, and then the client docu-signs it, and then they upload it to the portal for you, and they have the Spanish interpreter. That's down pat, like with both languages going on. And then, if your case is at 1:30, then you're in person and you're set for some sort of litigation. And you know exactly how he does it. He goes in order of the importance and the age, So it's so great because we have the advantage of that information to give to our clients to manage their expectations.
Exactly, and it's done differently than a lot of other counties, and we think it's done better than a lot of other counties, but it's done differently. So a lot of other attorneys that are coming from different counties that aren't used to it aren't used to that process. So we're going to be getting our clients in and out quicker and more efficiently than maybe some other attorneys who may be good DUI attorneys but just aren't used to that process that we are because we're there every day.
I think you just made a really good point. I don't know if clients understand the value of an attorney really knowing that jurisdiction. It's the smallest stuff. Like when we log on, they know us. Hey, Dave. Hey, Kelly. What do you need today? And we're getting called sooner than somebody who they don't know. The other thing is when we have, we're there every day, they see us, they respect us, they know Kelly can try a case. So if maybe I, have some burden of proof issues, I'm going to be more willing to negotiate with her. Or, David's always been super cool to me. I'm going to give him, this good offer because we have a great working relationship. And,
there's a rotation of the prosecutors, but I've always kind of felt like they've been good to work with in Kane County. For the most part.
Yeah. I mean, there's one main village prosecutor who is a private attorney, and he has contracts with a few different villages, but he's really easygoing and easy to work with. He, of course, does his job and cares about advocating for his villages and stuff, but he can analyze a case.
I won't name drop, but I've known him for 20 years doing this.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's kind of like, too, if you like scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Like, don't hassle me.
Right. he gets it.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not like a true believer, but he's fair, I think, on both ends.
Right.
And so that's easy. And I also think that the Kane County State's Attorney's Office, they're of a high caliber too. I feel like they're trained, they're professional, they dress professionally, they're on time, they respond to our emails like that.
They do. And especially in the DUI courtroom. Now, every county has their pros and cons, and some counties like DUI like DuPage, some counties like DuPage, for other cases like domestics, they treat things differently. Kane County has taken more of the mindset in like domestic cases that if the alleged victim is served, then they and they don't show up for a trial, then they could issue a rule of show cause, get a body writ, charge them with contempt of court. I feel like that's victimizing the victim. I don't agree with that, but it's their prerogative. So that's something that you need to know when you have that type of case in Kane County. So how do you work with that? Kane County is really good in those types of cases about many times offering a diversion program. So I know now we're not talking about DUI as much as a different type of offense, but in those offenses, they do offer like an alternative solution where you basically can win the case, but you got to work for it.
Right.
It'll get dismissed at the end of it.
I love diversion programs. I mean, a lot of times it gives a client maybe some services that they need, maybe some domestic violence counseling, anger management, even sometimes mental health, alcohol and drug, and it's like, it's a no-brainer. It's a no risk. You do X, Y, and Z, and in exchange, you get the case dismissed.
Right.
You can expunge it. It's all reward, no risk.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's what, I've heard so many times over the years, because you'll get a call from the victim, really.
Yeah.
Like, hey, my husband needs an attorney because he was charged with domestic battery. And I'm like, okay, on who? And they're like, on me. And I'm like, okay, well, I should be talking to him, not you. But, and then they just say that all I really want is for him to have some kind of counseling or something.
Yeah, a lot of times it's alcohol, drugs, I will agree with you. I think that the Kane County State's Attorney's Office is pretty conservative, pretty state-minded. Sometimes it can be tough on the defense bar in these collar counties, Lake County, DuPage County, Kane County, with the offers that we get. I mean, even on DUIs, it's really tough to get a DUI reduced to a reckless for people that have immigration issues. People who may have like a professional license or a CDL. The Kane County, like in general, I mean, they are so harsh on CDLs. They are not giving CDLs breaks at all.
It's kind of across the board for DUIs more and more over the last, 5, 10, 15 years. It's less and less negotiating, alternative, like you said, reckless driving amendments. And they have their reasons, I think they've been widely publicized, different cases where, they might look like they're lenient on a DUI, and there might be good reason for that because every case is different. And defense attorneys are doing their job and, giving mitigation and giving reasons why this person might deserve a break. But then, something happens, and then, obviously all state's attorney positions, the head state's attorney is a political position. So, they would rather have the judge find them not guilty than get a conviction on a reckless driving sometimes. And,
right.
I don't know if I totally agree with that, but that's a position that a lot of state's attorneys across Northern Illinois where we practice have taken. and Kane is one of those places.
Yeah. I think you brought up a really good point that I think people don't consider either. Like the state's attorney, like the head of the state's attorney's office in Cook County, like Eileen O'Neill Burke right now, that is a position that the people vote you
Right.
into. So they have to like listen to their constituents and what's important to them. I mean, just one
We're
example.
tough on crime. Right?
Exactly. I mean, DuPage, like Bob Berlin, that's why he keeps getting reelected every, time, is because he's showing that he's tough on crime. Like if you've seen the news, especially like on Facebook, I like follow the state attorney's office on Facebook and stuff. It's like Cook County retail thefts. Basically, Cook County has decriminalized retail theft, and Bob Berlin has taken the total opposite approach. Like he's like, we're so tough on retail theft that they charge them with retail theft and with burglary. And he's sending the message to people, do not commit crimes here in my county.
If you enter a structure, a building, with the intent of committing a crime, it's burglary.
Right. And he's charging them with it,
Which is insane.
Yeah. And I think the Kane County State's Attorney's Office is trying to take that approach on DUIs, that they're tough on DUIs and especially CDLs. Unfortunately, something happened 6 to 9 months ago where a CDL driver was driving their commercial vehicle and they were allegedly under the influence. I don't know if the case has been closed or if it's pending or he pled. I do believe that people are innocent until they're proven guilty.
Yes.
But he killed a Kane County sheriff, female police officer, and she was a mom and she had kids. And the worst part about it was that it came out that he had had a prior DUI.
Yeah.
And that he received a break on that prior DUI. And basically, a lot of people's feelings were if he hadn't received a break on the first DUI, then he wouldn't be a commercial driver and he wouldn't have committed this offense and this woman still would have been alive. So ever since then, the Kane County State's Attorney's Office has been super, super, super tough on CDLs, and they're not cutting CDLs breaks. And I'm hearing from a lot of our clients, like, kind of, I understand what you're saying, but why is that my fault? Why am I being punished? Why aren't I being given a break because of that person's like bad actions?
No, it's a fair question, and there's no real good answer other than they don't know you, and they, but at the same time, it's like they are being CDL drivers. They drive for a living, so whether they're in their CDL truck or they're in their personal vehicle, they're held to a higher standard. And is that fair? Everyone speeds. Everyone,
right, like minds could differ on that, right?
Right. Everyone, commits. I bet you if you put 100 people in a car and they were asked to drive for 30 minutes straight, every single one of them would commit some traffic violation, whether it's like crossing a fog line or stopping over a stop line or not signaling when changing lanes. It happens. But CDL drivers are held to such a higher standard, even in their own personal vehicles. It is a little unfair.
Yeah. And how would you say, like, us having that knowledge that Kane County is really tough on CDLs, how does that help our clients?
Well, I think the main thing is we know how to, we have a better idea how to approach it. But I don't think it starts with that knowledge. I think it starts with the relationship that we're there every day, that we get good results for our clients, that we are not, a-holes to the state's attorneys or the judges, but we advocate for our clients and they respect us for that. I think it starts there. And then when we have a situation where a person's in their personal vehicle and maybe there's a stop, they didn't roll to a complete stop before turning right on a stop sign, maybe there's something that can be done short of convicting somebody on a moving violation. Now, there is those masking laws that are kind of causing problems with CDL holders, but it starts with the relationships and the work that you do, and then the knowledge that you have, kind of all three of them in conjunction. I think, ultimately helps us get better results.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that's a really good point. And I think that it helps us strategize right away. Like, we see a CDL driver come through and they have a moving violation, and we know it's this particular village prosecutor or it's the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. We're like, we are not getting this reduced. So what's our other option? We got to set the case for trial. We need to review the discovery, review it with the client. We have to be prepared to go to trial. And the other thing is that we are so knowledgeable about CDLs. Like, one thing I would want to know right away is their driving history. Get me a copy of your abstract. I want to see if you don't have any moving violations in the last 3 years, I can advise you on that. I can counsel you on that, and I can manage your expectations, and I can also advise you for what's the best behavior for you in the future to maintain that CDL, because it's their livelihood.
Yeah, it's a good point, because not all offenses are going to affect somebody equally. So, we can have a knowledge, and we can inform our client on what their options are, with what the consequences are to those choices. The Kane County thing, we were talking about, just knowing Kane County. I have noticed that in my years there, that some of the judges will call all the in-person first before they go to Zoom. So if we know who those judges are, then we know to be there.
Yeah.
And to get the case called. And then others won't be like that. So that's another reason why you want someone that's there all the time.
One thing I love about Kane County is the branch court. So, like, if you have a petty traffic ticket or a traffic misdemeanor, like driving while license suspended or an aggravated speeding, you're going to be in one of their 3 branch courts. Yeah. And they all work the exact same.
Yeah, we got Aurora.
Yep.
We got Elgin, and then we got what's called Kane Branch Court, which is right on Randall Road, St. Charles.
Yeah, but they all work the exact same, which is so nice. Like, the officer will always indicate that you have to appear as the client either at 9 a.m. or 1:30, but actually all their Zoom is at 10:30. So they take care of all their morning people from 9 to 10:30 in person, and then 10:30 is all Zoom. So you get called quickly. If you want to work something out with the state's attorney, they put you in a breakout room. So it's almost just you and the state in like a little meeting. And I actually do find that the Kane County State's Attorney's Office is reasonable in the branch courts.
They are. They're extremely. Not to get into what's that called? War stories. But I was just in there yesterday, and I had a guy who literally has done nothing for like 2 years. He had to do 300 hours of public service work. He's done 0. And it was up for petition to revoke. And, because he knows me, and because, I was telling him, like, this is the situation with him, and, I get it, I totally understand, but, can we get, 3 more months, and, if it's not this way. He gave us the time, and I wasn't expecting it, honestly, but they are reasonable.
They are reasonable. I feel like they're really reasonable with compliance issues like that. And then if somebody's suspended and they can clear it up, they're like, go clear it up, come back, and they'll usually reduce it, to a petty for the person. I feel like their fines, fees, and costs are really reasonable. They ask people, how much time do you need to pay? 3 months, 6 months? You could pay online. As long as you pay like 2 weeks before, you never have to come back to court. I feel like they try and make things convenient.
Yes. No, I totally agree. That doesn't necessarily mean our jobs are easy. We work hard for them to, give us good deals. But yeah, definitely, I think Kane is, one of the better collar counties around here. I've practiced in Kendall too, and it's a totally different story over there. But DuPage is pretty decent. Kane is pretty decent. But yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just so helpful that we have this information. Like, we know if it's a village prosecutor that we have to get them the client's abstract before they can even, make us an offer. Whereas the Kane County State's attorneys, they can pull the abstract themselves.
Yeah.
So as soon as the client hires, we're like, hey, you have a village prosecutor. I'd like to get this reduced for you, but I need your abstract. And you ask them on day one, send it over to the prosecutor, and we usually have an offer worked out before we even appear in court the first time.
Yeah.
Which is great. I think another great thing about the Kane County, practicing in Kane County is the clerk's office.
Oh, yeah. I do like the clerk's office. I wish it was bigger.
Yeah.
They only have a couple windows open, but
Right.
but yeah, it's good. They're all pretty nice. They're helpful.
I totally agree.
You can do a lot of it, online, e-filing.
I think everyone who works there is so nice. They're competent. They answer the phone, and this might seem like, why are you guys even talking about this? But
because not all are.
Go to the Cook County clerk's office and then tell. But no, and the e-filing, that is such a huge advantage for us and our clients on a DUI, because we file documents with the clerk the same day that the client hires, and that's regarding the suspension of their license. And that starts a clock ticking in our client's favor and against the state,
Yes.
where the state then has to get us all the discovery within 30 days. And if they can't, then we can get that license back. So the fact that we don't have to drive out to St. Charles every time a DUI hires and we get that clock starting right away, that's huge for our clients.
Yeah, it's been countless times where I've called the clerk's office and there was an issue, like, this happened, and they're so helpful. They get back to you. Okay, I'll get right back to you. They take your number, they get back to you.
Yeah, and they literally call you back.
Yeah, they call you back. Like, okay, sure, you're gonna get back to me.
Yeah,
but,
about it. Can I get your name and direct line?
Exactly.
So speaking of DUIs, what do you think about the police officers in Kane County?
Yeah, I think they're pretty good. I think they run a pretty good investigation, which is not always good for us. But they seem to know what they're doing. You're always going to get good attorneys, bad attorneys, good prosecutors, bad prosecutors, good judges, bad judges, and good police officers and bad police officers. But as a whole, I think they're pretty decent in Kane County.
I agree with you. I think that for the most part, what I've seen in my experience is that they are professional. I've never witnessed like police officer in King County like being really disrespectful or violent or anything like that towards anybody. I think that they are typically good at instructing on the field sobriety test, which, like you said, might not be the best thing for us, but I think that burden of proof issue is either like there with the client or it's not. Like, either you did great on the fields, or you didn't. And it's kind of easier to watch that video with the client and manage their expectations instead of being like, this officer totally messed this whole thing up. Like, yeah, you were drunk, but
Yeah, like I said, some you're going to have good and bad. I wouldn't say I've never had a bad experience. But for the whole, they've been pretty good.
I think you've been practicing Kane a lot longer than I have.
Yeah, there was a case I had. There was a few in Aurora that were unbelievable, and I have their names if you want them. But
Yeah.
but there was two officers in Pingree Grove actually. The judge, and I give her a lot of credit for this, actually after the trial or during her findings in her ruling, she called them both liars.
Wow.
Yeah, which never happens. So
well, then they go on the Giglio list, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that is nice. What that means is that, like, if a police officer's credibility is called into question, they go on a list, and then the state's attorney's office or the prosecutor is required to tender us that list. And the fact that their credibility has been called into question, obviously that's really helpful to us if the state's going to call them as a witness, which a lot of times they just don't.
Right.
But again, then there's burden of proof issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, what are your thoughts about the judges in Kane County?
I've had some really good experiences with the judges in Kane County. Again, not all. I wouldn't want to have trials in front of certain judges Again, I don't want to name names,
No.
but there's a couple that I would stay away from, and there's we can do things about that. There substitution of judges and other options, jury as opposed to bench. But just kind of a quick little story. The DUI judge who I like, so I don't mind naming him, but he actually ruled against me on a DUI. And I was completely baffled in his ruling. I was like, I don't understand what that meant. I don't understand how he came to that ruling. And so I got the transcripts. I went through it. I combed through everything. I did a motion to reconsider. I pointed out some things, and he literally read something wrong. And I pointed it out, and I'm like, I think you
Heard this.
respectfully,
Yeah.
I think you misread this. I think you read this thinking that it meant something else. And judges never do this, but he changed his ruling. He's like, you're right, I did.
Mhm.
And so my client got a not guilty.
Yeah.
And I was so confused the first time.
Yeah. I think that's so funny that you say that, and I know that that's the consensus of a lot of attorneys here, but I would motions to reconsider all the time. I've had a lot of different judges reconsider their ruling. I think that it's like you said, they are human beings. They're sitting in court hearing all of these cases, making decisions all day long, and you just
tough job.
It is, just hearing every little nuance, is tough. And then seeing it then in a transcript and writing, you're like, okay, what was I thinking? I thought that witness said something different, but I do love that we have that avenue available to us, especially if we feel like the judge did make a mistake, and judges should be humble and really look at that. And if I was a judge, I'd much rather say, you know what, you're right. I was wrong. I made the wrong decision on a motion to reconsider than
be appealed.
Be reversed on appeal.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It just, I maybe I shouldn't, maybe it's their job, but I give them credit for at least, acknowledging they can make mistakes.
Yeah. I don't think it's easy for anybody to acknowledge that, but I totally agree with you. I really like and respect some judges in Kane. I think others maybe shouldn't be in the room that they're sitting in, or they should be really brushing up on the law of the room that they're sitting in, maybe shadowing other people, that kind of a thing. But I think what's important for us in our standpoint is that we are there so much. We do know them so well that, again, we can make the right decisions. We can strategize. Sometimes it's more important to me to have the right prosecutor than the right judge, and we can advise our client on that because we have that information.
Yeah. No, I agree. So that's Kane County. You mentioned something earlier, which is a big difference between Cook, DuPage, versus Kane, and the first court date of a traffic accident.
Yeah, this is my least favorite part about practicing in Kane County is that the officers or a civilian witness on a traffic accident, they do not have to be there on the first court date. So you get stopped for a petty stop sign ticket, and you can't resolve it on the first court date if the officer's not there with a dismissal. You have to set it for trial. And they make you and your client be on Zoom. Tell the judge you want to set up for trial. Then they make you have a signed jury waiver on file already if you want to set up for trial. If you don't have that on file, you have to get a date. So now you're talking about 3 dates on a stop sign ticket. Mm-hmm. And they're not even entitled to a jury trial on a petty ticket. This is what I don't understand about this. They make you do this, and then you set it for in person for trial. So now the client and you have to go there twice. The second time you got to go there in person. It's either going to be at 1:30 or 2 in one of the branch courts, and then you see if the officer shows up. And unfortunately in Kane, they're showing up 90% of the time. So then you end up getting soup at the end of the day anyways, which is not a bad outcome, but it's a lot of hoops to jump through on a petty stop sign.
Yeah, so a lot of times, look, I tell people a lot of times it's a math problem. It's a speeding ticket, or it's a stop sign violation, or whatever, and is it worth hiring an attorney?
Yeah, I think it really, really depends on the individual. If you haven't gotten a ticket in 10 years and you call us and you're like, I totally ran that stop sign. I literally got pulled over 2 days ago pulling into this office, I was on a Google Meet with one of the case managers, and I'm like this as I pulled the U-turn, and the
Oh,
officer's
God.
here, and I like literally smiled at the officer, and he's like, I pulled you over because you were on your phone. I'm like, I know. Then I was like, I work right here. He's like, right here. I'm like, right here. He's like, all right, well, I'm going to give you a warning, but I want you to tell all your friends in there that I let you off with a warning.
Yeah, the driver defense team.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I think it really
It
depends
can
on.
happen to anybody.
Yeah. It really depends on the person. Like if you haven't had a ticket in 10 years and you don't want to spend the money on us and then also potentially spend the money on fines, fees, and costs, you're eligible for court supervision here in Illinois, which is not a conviction, doesn't add any points to your driver's license, won't increase your insurance rates. Just send in the request for supervision and pay the whatever it is, $250. But if this is your third ticket this year and you're looking at a suspension,
Yeah.
you're a young kid, especially a male, this might affect your insurance rates, well, then that's a different story.
Yeah, you want to avoid traffic school or, potential, other terms like public service work,
Yeah.
things like that. Then, yeah.
Or clients are like, I did not run that stop sign.
Absolutely.
I full, complete stop. You're like, okay. Sometimes your pride's more important than.
Let's get the video.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Right. All right. So that's what David and I think is unique about practicing in Kane County. We both think it's super important that we have all of this information. It really helps us manage our clients' expectations. And it also really helps us strategize and get the client the best outcome. I do think it's super important that you choose an attorney who not only practices the case type that you're charged with, but really knows the jurisdiction and the players within it.